So now that you have got a little more familiar with Words Their Way, and you've looked at the assessment, and you know what your groups are, and you know who is where as far as the kinds of kids that you have is when it comes to spelling stages. Hopefully you have assessment sheets that look like this, where you've checked off what they do know, and you have written what they don't know. You can now start to think about, like, okay, how am I going to teach this? What is this program based on? So this program is based on the idea of sorting. Donald Bear in Donald Bear's research, he has found that sorting words in all different kinds of ways actually has them learn it in a way that sticks, instead of the old way that we used to do, which was to memorize a spelling list every week and take a spelling test on Friday, and then research shows that we forget it. Um, this is a more logical way of learning words, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So there's three main parts of Words Their Way when it comes to teaching them. So the introduction and the modeling is extremely important. That is really the teacher part of it. It typically happens one day. You'll be introducing the sort to your students, and you'll be getting that sort. You can either get it on your digital subscription, or it's in the workbooks themselves, depending on what you decide to use. And I think either is fine, or you can do a combination. And then once you introduce the sort, the kids need to practice those sorts over and over and over again, with some extension activities as well. And then you would assess them, but not in the way that we assessed when we were kids. So let's talk about those stages. So um, the when you start a sort, it's absolutely imperative that you start with. I think there are poems that come on your digital text, and if there aren't, you don't always have to use a poem, but you just really want to have like a whiteboard with your kids sitting at a kidney table, or on the rug in front of you, or in a cluster of desks, and you would start to introduce that sort to them. Quite often I would use inquiry. So I would put the sort up without the headings on top, and I would say, what do you notice about these words? What do they have in common? What don't they have in common? If you had to put these in a sort, how might you sort it? So you have some really good conversation with the kids about what they're noticing about that week's list, and that is teacher centered. So you talk about you might then reveal the headings to them, and you would talk about what those headings say and why they say it, and the phonics principle that follows that heading. And would work for about 10 to 15 minutes with the kids, getting them to understand the different words that are in their sort for that week. And then day 2 and day 3 and day 4 and day 5 is really what I recommend. The kids would then be practicing by doing all kinds of sorts. Now, these slides are from Pearson, and they've set them up. And I am going to recommend something a little different than what they recommend. They recommend that the first sort be where they cut the words out, or they're on the digital and they're literally moving them around. Um, I would say that the first time you have them sort, they should do a writing sort. So they have the words in front of them. They might open up a spelling notebook, or you might have a Google Doc or a slide deck where they are actually writing the words. Two reasons. Research shows that when you use two different modalities, you learn something better. So the kids are reading the words and then writing two modalities. But the other reason that I think a written sort is important to do first is because it lessens the work that you have to do, because you will be working with other groups, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But if the kids do a written sort for their first sort, you can check their written sort. You can check to see, do they have this? This is what they wrote down. Do they understand this sort this week? Do they understand the phonics concepts? Do they understand the word patterns that they're using? It's something tangible that you could look at and check, so that if they don't have it, you can pull or you can adjust. If you have them do a rote sort the first day and you're with a group, you might never see it, and they may be sorting wrong day 2 and day 3 and day 4. So a written sort really is a smart way to start, because then you have a record of what they think is correct. So one way to sort is to give the kids the workbook page or the page on your digital subscription and have them say, I'm going to write the headings out, and I'm going to write the words underneath the headings that I think belong there. And then I'm going to somehow check that with you, whether it's you pull the notebooks at the end of the day and maybe leave notes or something. Totally up to you how you do that. But a written sort is really, it's one kind of sort, and it's the one that I highly recommend you do first. There's a written sort. They recommend day 3. I recommend day 2. Day 1 is modeling. Day 2 is written sort. Day 3, they can then cut and sort, and then they have their notebook that they can check, right? So they can do this sort themselves, or they can have a partnership and one partner do the sort while the other plays teacher. They have that notebook in front of them. They're watching them sort. They're giving them feedback, and then they switch. But that, notice how that written sort becomes a really important tool to kind of check themselves on the other days that there is a sort. So one kind of sort is a written sort. Second kind of sort is a manipulated sort, where they're setting up the headings and they're moving it around. Lots of teachers can't stand the cutting and the pasting, which is why I recommend the digital one. But if you don't want them to cut and paste in school, assign it for homework. Have the, and not the sort, but just literally the cutting. Have them put in a baggie and bring it back to school the next day. That way you don't have to deal with the cutting. But there's a lot of ways to do that to get around it if you don't really love that cutting. Another great way after day 2 and 3 of sorting, another great way, and this is it's such an important application of the skill, is to send them out into the world and see if they can try to find words that fits their word pattern for the week. And so you would do that with books. You would give them 10 to 15 minutes on day 4 to do what's called a word hunt, which is, I'm going to go out and look in the world, in a dictionary, in books that I'm reading, in posters in the class, to see if I can find one representation of each of my headings, to see if what I'm learning about word patterns actually takes place in other words besides the words that are on my sheet. So this is a really, really smart and important step, because it allows the kids to see that this thing that I'm doing is not in isolation. This is a word pattern, or these are word patterns that are out in the world, and I'm going to go find some. So there are all kinds of games in on your digital subscription that they can play. One that I would often play on day 5, it is race each other. So, or can you beat the clock? And so I would have everybody take out their sorts, no matter what group they were in, and I would say, we're going to try to do a sort in a minute 30. Go. And the kids would all do it really fast, and then they would check with their writing sort, and then I would say, okay, can we do this in a minute? And everybody would do it. And it was great for me to kind of look over to see like who's still struggling, and who do I need to still meet with, so that I can give them a little bit of help if they were unable to 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 sort quickly. The other thing that I often did as a game was, I would put the kids in groups of 2 or 3 or 4, and I would have them bring the words that they found out in the world the day before, and they would create a large sort together, where they sorted together the words that they had for the week, but then they put their words in the center. Maybe they did it on index cards and stuff. And then the other kids in the group would have to see if they could place the words that their group mate found in the right under the right heading. So these are just a couple of things that you could do. Notice they don't all take very long. It's just getting into a routine of getting the kids to practice this stuff.